would have failed.
Alright, what's good everyone? Welcome back to a new YouTube video. In this video, we're essentially just going to be breaking down the trade I taken today, being Thursday, October 30th, 2025. As you can see, it was a rather long trade. It took about 4 hours, in fact 5 hours to complete, but profited over 195 points. And pretty much just going to be breaking down everything. Essentially, it's how I made just under $30,000. And just going to be giving you guys all the insight in regards to my pre-market analysis, the development of our weekly power 3, our daily power 3, and how ultimately that led to our forward power 3 in which I had entered within. So once I'm done talking here, I'm going to show you guys the trade recording, and then from there we'll be breaking it down all after. Catch you guys then. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that trade recording. Now we're going to get into my pre-market analysis and everything that I've been posting over the last few days. And this stems from understanding the development of our weekly power 3. Now, when it comes to our weekly power 3, we obviously stem narrative and stem bias from our yearly, quarterly, and monthly power 3 based off the development of that. However, there are certain exceptions where we strictly focus on weekly power 3 development, and that is when we have a week such as this, where we immediately open and expand. And weeks like this, even though our yearly, quarterly, and monthly power 3 all are bullish, they're all distributing higher. In a week like this, we have to understand that there's no strong manipulation, just no manipulation whatsoever. On top of the fact that there is a massive gap, a massive nuwag just being left unfilled. And that is an issue when you're trading on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Understanding that this is unfilled. And by understanding this, we are in the mindset of lower before higher. Now, even though the higher time frame, the yearly, quarterly, monthly power 3, all of them are distributed higher, they're all bullish. We have to, on a lower time frame within the weekly power 3, go lower before we can continue higher. And ultimately, that's been my mindset since FOMC yesterday. And that is where I posted this idea. And that is so far what is playing out. Because as we can see, once FOMC was released, we expanded, we manipulated higher. In this manipulation higher, we can see very clearly that NQ right here, make it clear for you guys, NQ, ES, both of them run out the previous day high. YM, on the other hand, fails to do so. Now, this on top of forming SMT, the previous 6-hour high, both of which putting in our high of the week. And that is ultimately what stems our weekly reversal. Now, it wasn't just that alone. We have to see our lower time frame power 3s support the higher time frame power 3s, because right now, like we talked about earlier, yearly, quarterly, monthly power 3, all of them are distributing higher. However, our weekly power 3 development does not support that, and that same logic applies to our lower time frame power 3s. So if we are potentially looking for a bearish weekly power 3 price to return to the low of the week, we have to see lower time frame power 3s support the weekly power 3 in terms of bearish development. And we got that, as we can see right here, today's open, which is Wednesday 6 p.m, aka the opening of Thursday's daily candle. We open, leave behind a devil's mark, and immediately expand to higher, specifically expanding 250 points up to the previous day high. That's when we form SMT with previous day high, previous 6-hour high, and from there we then have strong expansion lower. And that is what was presented going into midnight open. Midnight open was able to expand immediately lower without any manipulation attached to it, due to the fact that all of our manipulation had taken place prior to midnight open. From 6 p.m. to midnight, that was our manipulation. So no reason to see more manipulation after that midnight open. And from there, we strongly expand lower. Ultimately, from that point, we just accumulate over the next few hours, ultimately leading to 7:30, which is our true New York session open. And we can study right here that after we had expanded, we then returned into EQ of this range, rebalancing this range, validating continuation lower off of that. True New York session opens right here, manipulates up, and immediately starts displacing lower. And this is what brings us to 9:30, where we're initially looking for a trade. And now we can go into my pre-market analysis. So in my pre-market analysis, I ultimately was stating that, well, initially an hour before market opens, I was initially still 50-50, but more leaning bearish. And as market was getting closer to opening, and keep in mind I'm in CST, so this is 9:17, I said I updated on my pre-market analysis, stated with how strong the displacement we're getting prior to market open. If we get 1 hour CISD, then we're definitely going to favor shorts going into the morning, and ideally rebalance the recent expansion range and then continue. And that expansion range is this range right here, in reference to what I'm talking about, rebalancing before continuing lower. So my mindset going into 9:30 was higher before lower. And lower, I obviously posted my idea in my intraday the day before, the night before, I guess. And that was that we returned to Newark. So that was my draw liquidity for the day. And 9:30 opens and immediately manipulates lower. And that was initially an issue because Okay, in this manipulation lower. Why is that an issue? Well, because now we're missing the initial expansion lower. But fear, what is the most important thing that we can understand right here? It's the fact that there is no SMT attached to the low. There's no SMT attached. Now, fear, you're looking at this. You might be looking at this and say, fear, but there's SMT right here and here. Guess what? I don't use that SMT. I use a specific time-based SMT. If you want to learn that, feel free. In the link in my bio. Yes, I'm doing some promo in the link in my bio. I teach everything in regards to Po3, market maker models, and quarterly theory, which enhances and gives me precision through incorporating time-based cracks and correlations, so time-based SMT. And here, there was no time-based SMT. And by understanding that, we can then immediately point for lower prices because we know that moves don't just happen randomly. We always have SMT attached to them, and that is time-based SMT. And that is why I continue to have such a strong bearish bias. And then guess what? What we then proceeded to do was one, rebalance, not that range, my bad. The recent expansion range in which I was talking about in my pre-market, the range just got a little bit larger. We rebalanced that range. Now, not only that range, but the entire daily range at that. And I was actually on the next 50-minute candle. We rebalanced the entire daily range, rebalanced this recent expansion range, both of which are valid to look at, and both of which I had referenced. Now, that is what we're getting going into 10 a.m. because obviously when it comes to my Po3 trading, if I don't get an entry between 9:30 and 9:50, then I just wait for 10 a.m. 10 a.m. opens, and what do we see? Immediately manipulates higher. Now, my mindset here is, okay, I'm bearish biased because there's no SMT at the low of the day, no SMT externally. So we're looking for continuation higher at a minimum back to low of the day, potentially even to our external liquidity, which is the new WOG. 10 a.m. opens, immediately expands higher, aka manipulates higher. In this manipulation higher, what we're taking note of is, first thing, SMT. As we know, we already have SMT with the previous day high. We don't need to see another higher time from SMT. All we're looking at this point is some sort of lower time from SMT. And if you look at this chart right now, it's very, very obvious where that SMT is. We can see right here. Again, this every SMT that points out, even if I'm not specifying it, it is all time-based. NQ, ES both fail to run out the 730 high. YM does. From there, in the proper time frame alignment, we can just say this is SMT, the previous 9-minute high. In the right proper time frame alignment, we then form another SMT with the previous 5-minute high. As you can see, NQ, ES both soup that 5-minute high, and ES fails to. This then validates us to drop down to a 1-minute time frame. On the 1-minute time frame, this is specifically a quarterly theory concept in which, if I were to explain it without having a lesson on it publicly, it would make no sense. To put things simple, with this quote-unquote quarterly theory concept, I was able to validate an entry without waiting for a CISD. Because as we can see back here, there's no SMT of the previous 1-minute high. So we can't necessarily validate dropping down to a 15-second just yet. However, there's a different type of SMT here, and we specify it as a crack and correlation, which has a specific term, but just so I don't overcomplicate anything, we can just say I entered. Entering off of the CISD was just as valid. You could have waited for that, but I didn't want to sacrifice my risk to reward, so I wanted to get a premature entry, which was off of a different type of crack and correlation, and simply put, I had entered there. Boom, I entered, and price immediately started to expand lower, a little bit slow, but was expanding lower. And as you saw in the trade recording, I had drawn out EQ of this expansion range, and even though there was no SMT with our at the low of the day, we still have to be careful, we still have to manage our risk, and we still have to be cautious of the possibility that we have a stronger manipulation move higher without forming SMC, and we return to there later, potentially during earnings. That's always a possibility, and that's why we measure risk. Once we hit EQ of this range, I mitigated that risk by going break even and just let it run. And when it comes to my TP1, let's see here if it's going to show. Let me turn on my new dogs. Not that. So when it comes to my TP, it was simply just a discounted new dog and discount relative to this expansion range. And the only reason that was my TP was simply just to play it safe. And reason being is because we obviously know that there's no SMT at the low of the day, so that's our immediate drawn liquidity. And of course, aside from that, we have an external drawn liquidity, which is our new WOG. The thing is, though, we have to keep in mind how significant of a move this trade in itself is. That's about a 200-point move. And when it comes to my average points per trade, it's anywhere from, 60 to 120 points. So seeing over 200 points, that's very, very significant. I don't need that much. So obviously I'm going to mitigate some risk off of a potential place in which we could reverse from. And I TP'd there for about 133 points. And that's in fact where I TP'd everything on my funded accounts. And then I left a runner on my other account in which I was recording on. And that was ultimately my game plan, pretty much just locking in profits. And I'm actually very, very grateful I done that, because from there on out, it was essentially just torture for the next 5 hours, or I guess the next 4 hours from that point. And when I say torture, it's not literally torture. This is what I consider as great beneficial mental training, because obviously when it comes to trading, it's partially strategy and heavily psychology. And when it comes to psychology, it's not just something that you're necessarily born with. Everyone struggles with psychology problems. It differs person to person on how long it takes to overcome those psychology problems, based off their patience, based off of their discipline, all of that. And stuff happening like this, where we just consolidate for 4 hours straight, but you're convicted in your trade, it is such good mental training to hold the entire way. Even if I were to be broke even on the remaining contracts and missing out on that $3,800 in which I had profited once my TP was hit, that amount of money is nothing compared to how great of a lesson it is in terms of my discipline, or how much my discipline improved just by holding that entire way. It's something that a lot of you guys really don't think about, is how much it actually improves you holding through this uncomfortable price action. I don't know the specific terms I should be using, but it's a great test of your mental resilience and discipline. And that's essentially what I think about. I think about what kind of person am I, what kind of person am I telling myself that I am if I were to sell early? Or it's like, what kind of person am I if I were to hold the entire way? That's what I think about. I think about, would I be more proud of myself if I were to lose out on $3,800? Or would I be more proud of miss out on $3,800 and hold the entire way, whether it's break even or stop loss, without getting feared, without being greedy? Would I be more happy then? Or would I be more happy if I were to sell out of fear, hold longer out of greed? I probably wouldn't. No. I think long term, the more and more that I get mentally stronger, hold through uncomfortable drawdowns such as this, it ultimately long term is going to result in me going from 5 figures a month to 6 figures a month to then 7 figures a month, and who knows how much further I could get from there, potentially even 8 figures, but we'll deal with that. We'll take things one step at a time. But that's essentially my thought process when I hold through uncomfortable drawdowns such as this. Now, additional things to take note of additional things to take note of is the fact that we also, at the specific reversal point, we reversed off of the new WOGs, or not new WOGs, these 2 different new dogs that overlapped each other. 15-minute inbounds right here, and 1 hour time frame. Nothing too significant here, aside from the fact that we traded into this 1 hour CIBI. Again, we had a 1 hour CISD back here. Once we closed below here, traded back into it, 1 hour CIBI. All these things lining together, such high conviction. 15-minute CIBI, 1 hour CIBI, 2 different new dogs, and then everything else we listed. But overall, hope you guys enjoyed, hope you guys learned something more importantly, and hopefully you can apply the lessons I taught you in this video going into tomorrow, going into the rest of the week, the rest of the year, and so on and so forth. But I'll catch you guys all in the next video.